We are live. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Tuesday live stream here on Central Spirits. My name is Sam Nashgreen. I am Spread of Spirits. I'm joined today with my friend and temporary West Coast brand ambassador, officially NorCal brand ambassador for one of probably my favorite bourbons on the market, Woodford Reserve, Mr. Jeff Seymour. Jeff, dude, I know we were talking about it a little bit before we went live, but it is good to see your face and hear your voice because I know we interacted a little bit, over text message and stuff during COVID. I interacted with Toscano a little bit, your, East Coast counterpart. But I don't think I've seen you since we were both at Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans in 2019, before we knew everything was going to be shut down.
I know, and I think for people they're tuning into this, obviously, like I used to live in LA, so we used to be able to kick it, more often than not. So it's really good to see your face too. But yeah, I think it's been almost 2 years now because Tales of the Cocktail,
COVID,
July of 2019.
Yeah, but I'm really stoked you're doing this with me.
Absolutely, thank you
as
so
I
much for having
said,
me.
I love Woodford. Woodford's in the book. I've been trying to get a hold of your gift shop manager to see about getting the book into Woodford. So,
oh, nice.
If anyone from Brown is watching this, please hit me up. It would be amazing to have my book available at your distillery gift shop.
I'll send out some emails too on my end, and we'll just kind of tackle all the avenues and try to get it in there for you.
That'd be awesome. So we're tasting not the usual suspects today. We have 2 of the core range bottles, but technically 1.5. Then we have a media sample I got of the Woodford Baccarat, and then distillery only 5 wood. That came out in 2020. So I say 1.5, obviously, because eagle-eyed viewers will notice that this is the Woodford malt, but there's some gold Sharpie, I don't know if they can see it, on the label. And that is because I wrote sherry on the bottle. So what I did is I was gifted a Woodford mini barrel by Luke, who used to work for, Woodford Reserve down here. For those of you in SoCal, you probably know Luke Ford. Amazing bartender. This Topo Chico really messes me up sometimes. Amazing bartender, amazing brand ambassador. It is the best soda water in the world. There's nothing that can beat it. Actually, that's not true. There's one soda water that can beat it, but it's nothing you can commercially purchase. It's the soda water off the Suntory highball machines.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's Johnny the Scott. Johnny the Scott did that machine. So, I mean, that is 100% a fact that is the best soda water out there.
Yeah. So that is the only thing that beats Topo Chico. And then Mineragua comes from Jarritos, comes pretty dang close to Topo Chico, which is still delicious, Mineragua. So when Luke gifted me this, mini barrel, I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to put in it? And I had no idea what I was going to do with it yet. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to put Woodford in there. It's really expensive. I don't want to ruin it. He's like, you need to put Woodford in there. I'm like, okay. I don't mind putting Woodford in there. I just didn't want you to be like, why are you putting Woodford in, a mini barrel for a random cocktail thing? It's like, I don't mind putting Woodford in there. I'm a true believer in better ingredients, better pizza.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm stoked that the whiskeys that you picked out today are the ones we're going to taste. Obviously, like through 2020 and COVID, we did a lot of sampling, and so it's been great to be able to kind of revisit some of this stuff. But like you said, we're going to be doing some kind of off the wall stuff outside of maybe the double oak. And I'm glad that you have the malt that you finished in that sherry cask, because it's kind of delivers the theme of everything that we're going to taste is going to be different to Woodford Reserve because it's all been finished in different ways.
You're right, actually. The double oak is 2 bourbon casks.
Exactly.
Or rather, 2 new charred oak casks. It's a brand new charred oak, and then a second new charred oak.
Yep. Yeah, the main thing, and obviously, like when we can dive into the tasting, we can talk about these in whatever order. But one of the beautiful things about Woodford Reserve, and then especially with the double oak, is that so we always we toast our barrels before we char them, and so we have a proprietary way of doing this at the cooperage that we have in Louisville. And so basically,
and you guys are one of the only companies in America, at least one of the only American companies to have your own cooperage.
Right.
I believe the only other one, and it's not owned by a distillery, is from probably ISC, right?
I think so. I mean, there's a couple more that are buying up, but you're absolutely right. I mean, most distilleries, even some of the giant bourbon distilleries that are putting out millions and millions of bottles a year, are buying secondhand their barrels. So we're very, very fortunate that Brown-Forman we have our own distiller or our own cooperage, so we're able to kind of.
I think it's you guys in Heaven Hill, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Heaven Hill has one.
So we do a toasting process before we char the barrels, and so basically on any of the expressions that you have, including the malt that we're going to do today, and even a little bit of the baccarat, the first time it's aged, it's in a very lightly toasted and then a heavy charred barrel. So after it sits in those barrels for 5 to 7 years, depending on the batch that we put together, we'll put it in the second new cask, like you were saying, but we reverse that process. So instead of it being lightly toasted and heavy charred, we do a heavy toast on it and then just a flash 5-second char. And that's what it rests in for the other year. And it just kind of gives it a really nice caramel note. There's butterscotch to it. Those sweet aromatics really come through. And it's my favorite expression that we do. Have a little afternoon.
One of the really cool things about Woodford, you guys are the only distillery to date that has all 5 legal classifications of straight whiskey.
Exactly.
You have straight bourbon, straight rye, straight wheat, straight malt, and then I'm missing one.
Those were the 4. And so that all dates back to Prohibition. So the Federal Alcohol Administration Act in 1935 designated, when they were writing the bylaws of bourbon, protecting, what could be done versus, the moonshine and things like that. One of the things that they wrote in was that you could do 4 grains and for them to be considered straight spirits. So obviously corn or bourbon, and then like I said, rye, malt, and then wheat. And so with our wheat that we released in 2019, that kind of closed the gap, for us being the first distillery to have all 4 of those spirits, since Prohibition, which is really, really cool. And so the malt that we do, so, one of the things that, you and I have talked about this before, but one of the things to not get confused is that this is not a single malt. This is not to be confused with or even compared to anything coming out of Scotland, anything coming out of Japan, or even the American single malt movement that's happened, the Westlands of the world, Westward. This is a blend of our 3 main grains. So it's malt, it's corn, and it's rye. And we are the first.
The percentage is like 51, 35, 29 or something like that, right?
It's 51 malt, and then it's 47 corn, and then just 2% rye. So when you taste this, and obviously you have a sherry finish, but when you taste it, a little bit of the spice does come through. But the main reason behind that 2% rye is that at Woodford Reserve, and again with Brown-Forman, we have the luxury of having our own microbiologist. His name's Kevin Smith. And so we have a proprietary yeast strain that's only for Woodford Reserve. And that yeast strain has been cultivated to feed on these 3 grains. So without that 2% rye, the yeast isn't going to grow, and it's not going to, produce the alcohol. We're not going to get the fermentation. But it's just really nice. There's oats in it. It to me, I always compare it to like putting your nose in like a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. I think it's just all those cereal grains come through.
The thing that I like about no, please go ahead.
Oh yeah, just that nice. There's nice like honeycomb sweetness to it, and then those nice grain notes.
The thing I like about my sherry cask experiment here is that because I used I think it's an Amontillado, Los Arcos from Lustau, I didn't go with something super heavy like PX. So you can still get a lot of that whiskey character. The sherry doesn't really, it takes hold, but not like too much. So it's like kind of just like a back note, actually.
Yeah.
I'll have to give you some of this next time I see you.
I would love to try it. One of the things, we have the 5-wood, that we were talking about right before we went live. And I think that because it's blended, obviously, one of the woods is going to be the charred New American oak. And then this is going to be finished in 4 different casks, which is Ruby port, and then a tawny port, and then Amontillado and Oloroso sherry. And I really like that nuttiness from the Amontillado. And I think it really comes through in the 5-wood.
It comes through on the malt a lot. Now that it's had time to age a little bit, quote unquote, or rather oxidize and aerate, it's been around this still level for a couple of years now. Because I had this actually ready to go before the last Tales and brought a sample to Elizabeth McCall.
Oh, wow. How long did you
cool.
leave it in how long did you leave it in that cask?
Like 4 or 5 months.
Oh, great.
I got about 2.5, 3.5 maybe bottles out of it. It looks like the 4 I put in.
Oh, beautiful.
No, sorry,
so
I put in 5
of,
and got like 4.5 out, I think. I didn't have my angel share. I put in a whole case of it almost. I put in 5. I bought 6. It was at the time when it had just released and sold out instantaneously when there wasn't enough ready.
Right.
I was at a restaurant here in LA, and I walked up the street to my old job, which was a liquor store, and sitting on the shelf for retail was the Woodford malt. And I came back the next day and bought the whole shelf out.
Yeah, I remember, and we were really lucky in California when that came out because it only was released, I think, in 13 markets. And so California, obviously, we were able to kind of jump on that. And the same thing with the wheat, and again, like you were saying, it's just because there wasn't enough made. And, it went so quick because it's such a unique whiskey and you're not going to find a straight malt whiskey that's out there.
I'm sure there is one. I just can't think of it at the moment.
I can't either. We were kind of, putting our heads together because obviously there's several wheat whiskeys out there. The other big one out of Kentucky that, always comes to mind is Bernheim. Bernheim has always, had a beautiful wheat whiskey. But yeah, the straight malt though, outside of doing a blend with corn and with rye, I'm sure that there are distilleries in Kentucky that have some laid down, maybe waiting. But as far as, I've never seen one retail or in a bar before outside of the Woodford.
That just empowers me to look for it and find some so we can share it.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait to try this, the sherry cask as well. Yes.
I'm really, really enjoying it more than I ever have before. Letting it breathe and oxidize over the last couple of years is really the sherry. I remember when I told you it was just a very background note. It's more like playing second fiddle, but not in a bad way. So before it was more like, maybe like, it was like, I don't know how to describe it. It was like Ango. You come from the bar world as well, so it's like Angostura.
Right.
A little bit goes a long way.
Yes.
But if you only use a little bit, you don't really get the flavor of it.
How long did you have? Because you said you used Los Arcos, right? From
Los Arcos, yeah.
How long did you leave that in the cask before you threw the malt in there?
So I want to say they're both in there for 5 months, but I don't think that's correct.
But it definitely it was long enough to get a good deep soak into the wood, though.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did you try the sherry after you dumped it out?
Yeah, it was great.
How did the fresh wood? Yeah, did it go good?
It was delicious. I'm a sherry nerd too, by the way. I'm a whiskey nerd, but I also love sherry.
Same. Same.
I am supposed to have Lucas Paya, actually from House of Lustau, joining me the end of the month.
You know what's so funny is the flyer that you sent over. Remember, we were texting back and forth and joking about that picture that you
Yes.
put on there of me. That is actually, that picture was taken at the castle, the Lustau Castle. I was out there in 2017 for the global Lustau bartending competition. It's actually where I met my wife. And that night, that was right after the competition happened. Josh Lucas was there, Daniel Warlow was there, Paul Sanguinetti was there, and we were all kind of dancing and celebrating at the Chateau Lustau. That's where that picture's come from. So I'm very, very familiar with that sherry.
So the funny thing for you guys watching is that if you've noticed recently, I haven't been putting up the flyers that I used to. Now that you guys know I go live at the same time every week, I announce it on Facebook if I don't manage to go live. By the way, on that note, follow the social medias. Instagram is Scribe of Spirits, and Facebook is a beginner's guide to whiskey. Also, Facebook is Scribe of Spirits. And thanks for watching. Please remember to like the video, subscribe, and smack that bell like a bartender smacking their tins. Yeah, that's funny. I thought you'd like that, Jeff. When I was recording my 30 days of whiskey and 30 days of cocktails, my team was like, yeah, you need to, say thanks for watching, like and subscribe. So I came up with a smack the bell like a bartender smacking their tins.
Perfect.
And it just works. No, so as you were texting me earlier, I was literally working on that flyer for today. He texted me as I was working on the flyer to post, get the event and stuff, stream ready for today. And then it turns out the picture I picked of him, because I couldn't click on his profile picture. He's like one profile picture that I can't click on, that rightfully says, I can't breathe, justice for George Floyd. Let's never forget. And I'm like, okay, let me scroll through his pictures. Too many people, not clear enough shot. Oh, this one works.
Well, next time I'm gonna send you some headshots, and then you're just gonna have them back up, and you can just load next time we do this. So. But
now I know about the Lustau thing. I just want to use that from now on.
We would have never chatted about that had you not picked that photo.
It's funny how life works sometimes like that.
It's very serendipitous.
But yeah, no. So I have my CSW certified sherry, or CSWS certified sherry wine specialist from the Consejo Regulador de Jerez and House of Lustau.
That's amazing. I've always wanted to do that. We just got the certified spirit specialist. All the ambassadors did that, but I would love to do.
Oh, you lucky buggers!
You were talking about.
I was really hoping that I was going to get picked to do the Brown-Forman American Whiskey Steward program, but unfortunately I didn't make the cut, so I'm just going to Kentucky and buying my executive bourbon steward myself.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I heard it was when they were doing that, it was like a lottery system. So they got so many in, and then it was just like a random pick.
Oh, no, totally.
So
I just wasn't lucky enough to get picked.
That program was pretty cool, though.
Yeah, no, I know Jordan really was working hard on that with Lindsay over at Lush Life.
Mm-hmm.
The guys who don't know, Jordan Zimmerman is a fantastic individual in whiskey. She's a fantastic woman in whiskey. She comes from the Scotch side and is now head of trade development and education, right, for Brown-Forman?
Yeah, she does all the education and advocacy work, and she is. I mean, I can't sing her praises enough. I think that, just as a person, she's phenomenal, but, just the role that she took on, it was vacant for a while. And I mean, to walk in and just own what she's done and everything that she's put together, and especially kind of the challenging time that we all kind of went through as far as education goes, and where the ambassadors from all sectors, all brands kind of pulled out, and the way that she kind of turned everything for educational purposes for us, and then also for the bartender world. I mean, she's the best. She is the best. I can't
Absolute
sing her
respect
praises
to her.
enough.
And I'm really excited to actually get to meet her in person when I go to Kentucky in September. I've never met her in person before.
Yeah, she's great.
That'll be really fun. Hoping and planning to visit the Woodford Distillery and Old Forester. Because I'm pretty sure if I don't visit Woodford, Jordan and or Chris might have my head.
Well, just make sure that, especially when you go, message Chris. Make sure he's at the distillery, because it's always a good time when you get to hang out with Chris at the distillery.
So, for those of you who don't know, we're talking about Chris Morris, the master distiller of Woodford, who actually was very fortunate enough to have the opportunity to have a conversation with him before Derby, just after the Golden Mint Julep Cup winner was announced. So I will link to that in the, description of this video after if I remember. But it's on my channel if you guys want to go take a look at it. It's a two-part series called, are you ready for this? Are you ready for this, Jeff? You ready for this name?
I'm ready.
Talk Derby to me.
Perfect.
It's so perfectly punny. I loved it.
So you did you got to interview with him after this last Derby, right? Just a couple months ago?
Actually, we did the interview before Derby, but when the Mint Julep Cup winner was announced.
Oh, got you. Very cool.
So that was a lot of fun. We had a great little conversation. It ended up going for an hour. It was supposed to be like a half hour. We ended up chatting for about an hour, so I split it into two parts.
He is, one of my favorite times ever. I love getting to go back, and I can't wait to go back to the distillery. It's just so magical there, and you learn so much, and we do these educational trips. But a lot of my favorite times with Chris will be kind of like at the end of the day. There's a beautiful little back patio area at the Woodford Distillery that sits right along the creek, and just sitting and kind of shooting the shit with him, and his knowledge, and him being from Kentucky and Louisville. He has stories and stories and stories for days, and he is just one of the most intellectual, and you just get lost in all of his stories. I could just sit and listen to him for hours. He's just such
he also just
an amazing
exudes
man.
Hospitality.
Oh, 100%.
I've had the pleasure of meeting him actually in person right before COVID with my Bourbon rep, Yesabel, who's I love dearly. She's amazing. And they signed and gave me this bottle of Double Oak.
Oh, amazing.
So it says,
when we go,
2020, to Sam, all the best. Chris Morris, Master Distiller.
That's amazing. Yeah, when we host some of the Camp Runabuck, we were talking about Lindsey Johnson from Lush Life just a bit ago, but, we'll bring Runabuck campers out to the distillery, and he's so wonderful. He and Elizabeth will end up, in the gift shop after the day, because you kind of end at the gift shop. That way you can get, the distillery series. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can't get anywhere else. And, they'll sit up there and they'll sign people's bottles and just chat with people. And, they just have this open book kind of full access by both of them, both he and Elizabeth. And so, outside of making delicious whiskey, they're just huge advocates of and knowledge for Woodford Reserve and just bourbon in general.
100%.
So, yeah.
Now, a quick side note, actually, you may recognize these bottles because they were part of the backdrop for my friend Anna Rose Crone's Woodford Manhattan cocktail videos.
Yeah, I got to meet Anna Rose Crone when we did the Manhattan experience this year when we were down in LA. We did the LA final was at the Spare Room.
Beautiful venue.
Nobody got to go, and so it was just us. It was so weird for a Manhattan experience because normally they're just big parties and so much fun. But she is such a sweetheart, and her cocktails were so amazing. Just a well-deserved win in LA, and I saw bits and pieces of her final when she did that, and she's an incredible bartender.
Absolutely, and that's what I was saying. In her final submission video, she put out a call like, hey, do you have like any empty Woodford bottles I can use, for display? I'm like, I don't have any empties, but you're welcome to use this stuff, to like display and put around and like, decorate with.
That's awesome.
And
That's so awesome.
I was, again, talking about amazing women in whiskey working for Brown Forman in Woodford. Our friend Valerie Kelly, also amazing, fantastic woman.
Oh my God, I was texting with her today. She's the best.
When I did my 30 Days of Cocktail videos, I asked both you guys for some, like, set deck stuff. What arrived to me was I called her, I'm like, Valerie, did you just send me the fucking warehouse? I'm wearing the watch, actually, she sent me from Tense, the Tense Woodford Barrel Watch. And then I'm still trying to find a place for it, the bar mirror that we just had trouble incorporating into the videos because it was so big it would reflect the room.
Yeah, I'm so lucky that I get to, chat with her, bi-weekly and as much as I do because, she's also, she's been with Brown Forman for a very long time, just a wealth of knowledge. And she, again, you ask for a little barware and then you get watches and she's just such a giving person and kind of along the same field, she just kind of exudes hospitality, just kind of very, very fitting for our brand. And she's just a wonderful, wonderful human being.
Exactly. Kind, sweet, just super cool. God, that sherry malt is so good.
How much of that Baccarat do you have there?
I have probably 25 mils.
Oh man, so when they sent us, obviously like even the ambassadors we don't get the nice Baccarat decanters, but they sent us a sample that I keep in my Woodford decanter. But this stuff is.
So are we moving on to Baccarat then?
You want to? Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
I don't have any rhyme or reason why.
Now, the one question I've had for Baccarat that no one has been able to properly answer, I might have asked Chris Morris, I don't remember. What house is the barrels coming from?
So what we do, so they're all XO cognac barrels, right? And they've had 3 different vintages in them, right? So there's 30 years of cognac that we're talking before we ever get them. Because we wanted to keep them new, and a lot of them, when, we get them shipped over to the distillery, some of them, the wood is still wet inside, like they've just been dumped. And
good, that's how it should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, so because we want the freshest of the XO cognac barrels, dealing with just one house wouldn't be feasible because there's just not that many XO cognac barrels. So what we did is through our European Brown Forman counterparts, worked it out through a like a brokerage.
Broker.
Yeah. So we had a broker that deals with many different cognac houses, around France, and so they just vary from cask to cask.
Speaking of the Euro Brown Forman team, does what's his face still represent Woodford globally?
Oh, Tom Vernon?
Yeah, that's his name.
Tom Vernon. I haven't talked to Tom. In a while. I haven't heard otherwise. Obviously before COVID, we'd only see Tom a couple times a year just because, he's all over the world.
I only ever saw him in LA once, and it was for the Woodford Milk Punch series that they did at Spare. It was actually one of my first USBG meetings. It wasn't the very first. It was like my second or third.
I don't know if you remember this, but I was bartending at the Spare Room at the time, and I worked that event because Luke did it, and then Nadal was in town, who's Jordan's counterpart in Europe. He's a really big, tall guy with a shaved head. I don't know if you remember him. Fantastic.
Who's Jordan? Oh, Jordan Zimmerman. Jordan Zimmerman. Duh.
Oh, yeah. Jordan Zimmerman's counterpart in Europe. But yeah, anyway, I
don't remember that. But that would make sense because I was always trying to rack a brain. I'm like, when the hell did I meet Jeff? When the hell did I meet Seymour? Was it it was either like I must have met you at Spare Room and then we got reintroduced at Tails or something because I think I already knew you at my first Tails. No.
Yeah, because when I was bartending at the Spare Room in LA, Luke and I have been friends for years and years because I ran bars in Portland, Oregon. So way before Woodford, when he was working with the Gins, he would come up to Portland. And so we just became really good friends way back when. So anyway, when I was living in Los Angeles, and he would have all of his Woodford events, I was always going to them. So I think we probably met it at, Seven Grand or, some of the Woodford events when I was living down there.
Honestly, I don't remember when we met. I just know that I love you and you're an amazing person and I'm glad to know you.
Same. The small industry that we have, gets smaller every day.
It really does. Like, I can't tell you countless times where it's like, oh, how do you know them? Oh, I know them. Oh, you know this.
Yeah.
Like twisty knots.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. God, this Baccarat is so good.
It's so good.
Here's my dilemma with the Baccarat.
One of the things that I always notice about the Baccarat is that and we don't have a bottle of actual bourbon here, but
God, I wish I had a bottle. It was empty.
What's that?
Oh, you're talking about the actual regular bourbon. Gotcha.
Oh yeah. Taking it side by side with the regular bourbon, it actually gets a little bit lighter, even though it's spending 3 more years in these cognac casks. If you put them up side by side, it's just a little bit. There's a lighter hue to it. But oh my gosh, the notes that come out of it, it's like, dried. There's like dried cranberry. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
I need to reset palate. Hang on.
Mellow.
Now, I will say, my biggest dilemma with the Baccarat is the price that you're paying for the decanter.
Yes.
More than anything, you're paying for a fancy, beautiful, but fancy crystal decanter. I would love to see a Woodford XO released, just not in Baccarat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The juice itself, speaks for itself. But yeah, kind of that French connection that we have with the Baccarat decanter. And if you think about some of the other spirits like that, like as far as, we were talking about cognac, I love Louis Trey. I think it's delicious, but, obviously, like, when you're going out and you're buying Louis Trey, it's because of that Baccarat, crystal decanter, that it's housed in.
I've heard rumors, and I can never figure out what's true or not. I've heard a rumor that if you finish a bottle of Louis Trey, because the bottle is more valuable than the liquid inside, that somehow you can get it refilled.
Oh, interesting. We used to, at a bar that I ran years and years ago, we used to always, if it was whoever got the last drink of Louis Trey, got to keep the bottle.
Got the bottle, yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, it's like, oh, if you finish the bottle, like, there you go. But I've seen them on eBay for outrageous prices, so.
Oh, God, yeah.
You get the best.
And what's happening with that, honestly, is that it's someone who wants to, people who are buying that are people who want to refill it and then resell it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a shame. It's a real problem, and it's a shame.
I used to years ago have a Louis Trey bottle, and I took it home from the bar after we finished it one time, and I would keep my olive oil in it. That was my olive oil bottle.
Yeah, I love it.
Louis Trey bottle.
They're beautiful bottles, and I would love to A, try the Black Pearl, but B, keep a bottle of Black Pearl, even if it's like a little mini.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping, I really want one of the Woodford ones, when they said that they were from the distillery, they're like, we're going to send you guys out some Baccarat, and they're jumping. And then when it came in, one of the little sample sizes. I'm like, oh, but I really want that decanter. but they look beautiful on a shelf.
I want the Herradura Selección Suprema decanter.
Yeah, that's a beautiful bottle as well.
Which is also Brown Forman owned, for those of you guys listening and watching who don't know that.
Yeah, I love that Selección Suprema.
Oh, this is just so delicate.
It is. It's just a really beautiful, elegant
Toasted
whiskey.
oats and graham crackers.
Oh yeah.
Marshmallow.
Yep. And one of the best
I'm getting s'mores. I'm getting s'mores. That's what I'm getting, like s'more Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, it's like a toasted marshmallow. Yeah, the best part, if you're ever going through the rick houses with Chris Morris. So obviously, if you're, for those people who are watching that are unfamiliar, sherry casks are cognac casks, are much larger than our standard bourbon barrels that we have. And so our rick houses that we have aren't big enough to house these cognac casks we have Baccarat resting in. So when you're walking through the rick house, you'll see random cognac casks laying around on all different floors. And so when you're there with Chris Morris, he'll be like, let's go ahead and give this a try. He'll end up bringing out, and you get some Baccarat fresh out of the cask. And it's one of the most beautiful experiences. Yeah.
So let's talk about your rick houses a little bit, because we've been veering off course a bunch. That's what happens when two friends get together and start chatting, especially over a couple glasses of really, really nice bourbon, or malt, I suppose, too.
Yeah, malt,
Really nice glasses of Woodford. There we go.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little about the Woodford Distillery. When was it founded, and how has the expansion been? When did Brown Forman take it over?
Yeah, so the actual distillery dates back to the early 1800s. It was founded by Oscar Pepper and James Crow. They founded where the distillery sits is because right behind it is called the Glen Creek. They did it for the water source. They went out, and when you go out to Woodford, it's a lot of people don't know this. It's actually about 35-40 minutes outside of Louisville. It's like right in the middle. In Versailles, not Versailles. It's Versailles. But it's right in the middle of Louisville and Lexington. And so you go through these beautiful rolling hills. There's a whole bunch of horse stables. It's to call it picturesque is an understatement for Woodford Reserve. But it was founded there in the early 1800s. It was then taken over by a company called LeBrow & Graham. LeBrow & Graham operated through that distillery late 1800s up until Prohibition, and then they stopped. We weren't one of the few distilleries that were allowed to be producing whiskey during Prohibition, but they reopened and then ended up getting out of the distillery in the mid 60s. So Brown Forman bought the building, and they just had the land and the property. They weren't really doing anything with it. And so, one of the things about Woodford Reserve is I think a lot of people think we're a lot older than we are. We were actually founded in 1996. So, Brown Forman is looking at this distillery that they have and deciding that they wanted to invest money into it, build it up, and put out this really good full balance premium bourbon into the market. And a lot of people at the time thought that it was a terrible idea, because if you think about it, the idea for Woodford started in the late 80s, early 90s. And if you think about the drinking culture that was happening in the United States, whiskey itself was on a decline. So you have people drinking, the club drinks. Vodka was huge. Gin was making a comeback. Tequila was really big. People were drinking all of these other things except for bourbon. But we always knew that bourbon drinkers would come back. And so anyway, so our distillery is over 200 years old. We are now in the process of expanding production. We have these 3 beautiful copper pot stills that is a very picturesque part of the distillery and kind of what Woodford is known for. And so that's going to be expanded to 6. So we're going to mirror that on both sides. And I believe it's going to take about a year or so to fully double our production size. But we are one of, and here's a little trivia for you,
Please.
Sam. We are one of only 2 distilleries to make, sell, bottle everything our own juice. So just to put this in perspective, and this is something that you already know, but in Kentucky produced over 250 different bourbons in 2019. Those 250 bourbons came out of about 20 distilleries, right?
True.
Woodford Reserve is one of only 2 distilleries that only make and sell Woodford Reserve. Do you know what the other one is?
Hang on. Whoa, I mean, hang on. Give me a sec, I'm thinking. In Kentucky, only sells their own liquid, doesn't sell to anybody else for sourcing?
Nope, doesn't sell to anybody else, doesn't buy any juice from anybody else.
You got me.
Maker's Mark.
Interesting.
Maker's Mark and Woodford Reserve only, Maker's Mark only makes Maker's Mark, and Woodford Reserve only makes Woodford Reserve. And so,
what about Heaven Hill, for instance? Because they make all their own stuff. It's multiple brands, but they don't sell to anybody, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying is, I mean, there's so many brands that come out of it. We only make Woodford Reserve, and so part of that, if you look at kind of why we do what we do, part of our philosophy is that maintaining consistency as far as we have heat cycled rick houses. So if you think about a distillery that is just mass producing whiskey, right? In those big open air rick houses that are housing, say, 10,000 different barrels of whiskey, the barrels that are up on the top of the rick house are aging at a much different rate than the ones that are down below. So what you'll have is somebody coming in and being like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Even though this is the same juice, the same woods, they're aged at the exact same time in the warehouse, we're going to call this stuff up over here brand X. This is going to be brand Y over here, and then down over here.
I have a feeling I know who you're talking about.
Oh, I mean, it's just, that's just kind of, I mean, it's smart marketing.
Okay,
right?
well, one particular brand comes to mind in terms of that and marketing.
But the whole point being is that because we only make Woodford Reserve, we have to make sure that there's a consistency that, these barrels that are aging up over here and these ones that are down below are aging about the same rate. And they taste the same. They taste similar. We're doing about 100 to 120 barrels per batch to maintain that consistency, but we need to make sure that, the rick house is at a constant temperature so that they're not aging at vastly different rates.
So that's what I wanted to talk to you about, actually. I'm glad you brought it back up. I was going to bring it back, but you brought it back for me. Let's talk about temperature-controlled warehouses, climate-controlled warehouses. You're saying Woodford uses heat control. How do you guys do it? What do you do, like steam, or how do you control the warehouses?
Steam actually coming off of the stills. So, and in the summertime, obviously, we don't have to heat them, right? Because it's super hot in Kentucky. In the wintertime, when it's really, really cold in Kentucky, what we're doing is we're pumping hot air into the bottom of the distillery, right? So heat rises. So in the summertime, if you walk into a rick house, obviously it's much hotter up top and it's cooler down below. That's why typically the barrels that are stored at the top of a rick house are aging a lot faster than the ones that are down below. In the wintertime, what we're doing is we're pumping hot air into, as soon as the temperature drops to 60 degrees, we pump it back up to 90 degrees in there. And what we're doing is putting in the hot air below, and what that's doing is forcing the cooler air up top. So in the wintertime, we have cooler air up top, it's hotter down below, And then in the summertime, when we don't have to heat them, that's reversed. It's cooler down below and hotter up top. So all year long, what you're doing is you're getting this temperature fluctuation that balances out throughout the rick house all year long. So we're able to age 365 days a year, where a lot of distilleries that have open air rick houses, you know, in the winter months aren't able to age at all because there's nothing happening in those barrels, and you know, when it's 30 degrees outside.
Sure.
And again, you know, that all comes down to maintaining this consistency because we have to, because we only make Woodford Reserve. So if we had other brands, we could be like, well, you know what, if, you know, even though, you know, our core mash bill is 72% corn, 18 rye, and then 10% malted barley. 72, 18, 10 is our bourbon blend. So we could have those and have, you know, again, a barrel resting up top and one down below that would taste completely different. And so it'd be easy to just be like, well, let's just call this a different whiskey, you know, because it's going to taste very different. But because we only make Woodford, we just, you know, we maintain that consistency when we do the blending process.
Okay, I think I'm following you. So why would someone not want to control their warehouses? You know, that's what I'm not following is like, what's the benefit of not controlling the warehouse? You're talking about the benefit of controlling it for maturation consistency.
I think probably, I mean, you know, this is just me thinking, you know, it's probably pretty expensive to, you know, and especially if you have, we're lucky at you know, at Woodford that, you know, our production, we don't have 10,000 barrels of whiskey that are resting like, you know, some of the major distilleries. So I'm sure that there's a lot of expense that goes into it if we were much bigger. I think another reason is that, you know, if you are housing, say, 10,000 barrels, it does make sense from a business standpoint to be like, hey, just let them age at whatever, you know, and this is coming from, you know, maybe a master distiller, and they are going to taste very different, and let's have multiple whiskeys. You know, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having multiple whiskeys, you know, coming out of a distillery. It's just not something that we do, if that makes sense.
Run that line one more time, please.
So I think that if you're a big distillery, that it makes economical sense. It makes, you know, there's a lot more money in having a whole bunch of different whiskeys that you can sell if they're aging at a different rate, you know, and it seems to be like it would be expensive to have to go into your rick house and make them all climate controlled. So I think at the end of the day, it probably comes down to money, would be my guess.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I don't know for sure. You know, I always hear different things. I always hear people talking about, we don't climate control, we don't this, we don't that. And I'm just like, now that we're talking about it, I'm like, at first I just accepted it. Now I'm thinking like, oh wait, why? Or why not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, that's probably more of a, next time you talk to Chris, you know, that's probably a question for him. You know, it'd be great to see like a master distiller kind of panel, you know, and have kind of all of these different styles. I mean, and kind of see their opinion on where they come from on it.
That's a great idea. I need to do that. I'm going to reach out to all the Kentucky distillers.
And all of these, it's so crazy how different all of them are.
Night and day. And
the ones that we're trying right now, you know, obviously outside of the straight malt, you know, the Baccarat, the double oak, and then the 5-wood, it's all the same mash bill, and it all came from our bourbon. They started out exactly our bourbon. They just the different finishing changes each 3 of those whiskeys. Just they're all so different.
That's the power of alternative match. I don't want to say alternative maturation, but that's not right. But that's the power of alternative barrels, you know, using different style of barrels.
Yeah.
Because if you use only new charred oak, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's going to taste like it always does.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you throw it in, you know, the cognac casks, like with the Baccarat, it's going to pick up some of that cognac, with the 5 wood, the 4 different types of wood you use to finish the maturation, and it's going to taste different.
Yeah.
Let's move on to what was my personal favorite, the double oak. It's been dethroned, last I had it, by the wheat.
Oh, nice. Yeah, the double oak is always, I mean, when I started out, when I was still bartending, way before I worked for Woodford, it was the rye that really turned me on to Woodford Reserve. I still remember the day that the rye was presented to me by, the rep that I had at the time, brought it in. And I was never really a huge rye fan. It just wasn't, I mean, it was fine. I liked making cocktails with it, but I was always more of a bourbon guy. And I had never tasted a rye like that. And I think a lot of it is because of the low rye yield that it has. It's only 53% rye. And so for years, drinking Woodford, it was my go-to. And that's what I would preach to people. I'm like, hey, have you had this rye? Like, this has kind of changed the rye game for me. But the double oak is I think, far and away my favorite. I find myself kind of gravitating back towards it more and more. Or if I go, anytime I'm in a bar and I see it on the shelf, I'm always calling the double oak.
It's a hit of mocha and barbecue sauce almost.
It's just, yeah, there's, I always make cocktails. I always gravitate towards making cocktails with the bourbon and the rye. And then the double oak, I always just want by itself. If I go to a restaurant at the end of a meal, a little double oak, just those sweet aromatics that come out of it, it's just not like no other bourbon that I've ever had.
A couple of times this year, speaking of virtual things, going back to cocktails and virtual things, Woodford is doing some fun, like little Woodford at home, shows how you Woodford, show me your Woodford things. And I actually used the sherry for that. The sherry
nice.
malt, rather. Because I didn't at first want to open my Woodford Double Oak signed by Chris Morris, but it's just Woodford Double Oak.
Yeah.
And I needed Woodford Double Oak for my 30 days of whiskey and 30 days of cocktails. So I bit the bullet and opened it up, and I shared it around, and I've loaned it off to friends for versus I loaned it to Rose for her set for her final video.
Yeah. What do you like to make with the double oak?
My favorite bourbon cocktail is a Gold Rush.
Oh yeah, I love a good Gold Rush, and that's actually a really fun drink to make with double oak, just because it already has those nice, again, those sweet aromatic notes. So like having a little bit of honey involved in that, and then the acidity of the lemon juice. That's a really, really good cocktail for that.
And the fact that it is 45 too, I like the slightly higher proof. It'll stand up better to dilution.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my favorite stories from my time in this industry so far is my friend called me. He was running a bar in the valley, not far from me, and everybody who knows me knows whiskey is what I do. So he calls me, he's like, "Hey, I'm thinking of looking for a new rye for my well. What do you think of these?" I'm like, "Well, these are all good, and if you're gonna go with this brand that both was leaning towards, I'd go with their bonded version." I'm just trying not to name competitor brands, of course. And he's like, "I'll look into it." It was like $1 more for the bonded versus the regular. And I'm like, dude, the bonded is going to stand up better in cocktails. That 100 proof versus 80, that extra 10% is going to stand up so much better. And I was right, and he went with it.
Yeah, I think that outside of our batch proof, anything that you ever get from Woodford Reserve is always going to be 45.2. Yeah, the batch proof this year, and won double gold at San Francisco at the Spirits competition. We were
I want a bottle of batch proof. We were texting about it. I'm like,
I
well,
know.
it's not for 150.
Yeah, I know.
Is that good? 150?
I mean, it seems like it would go up from there because I think typically they run about 100, right? The Masters Collection stuff, if you see it in retail. Yeah.
Good luck finding them at retail, dude. You know that as well as I do.
Yeah, but it's it's a really, really good one. But you know, again, going back to the, you know, the proof of Woodford is just, it's right in that nice sweet spot for making cocktails. So
yeah, no, I was talking to Chris actually about this. I'm like, will we ever see a cask strength the core range? He's like, probably not.
Yeah.
He's like, you have the batch proof, deal with that. I'm like,
even the batch proof, you know, the story goes is that, you know, obviously that's part of our Masters Collection series. So we have the experimental Masters Collection that comes out in the fall, and then the spring Masters Collection is always the batch proof. But the batch proof kind of came to light because people were like, when are you going to do either, you know, a bottled in bond? When are you going to do a cask strength? And he was just like, nope, this is what I make. You know, this is how you get Woodford Reserve. And so that kind of came to be by a lot of people kind of like, hey, we like something, you know, a little higher, a little, you know, a little more punchy. But so that's why, you know, once you're like, all right, here's some batch proof. So yeah, but this year especially, like, I can't wait to get my hands on it.
So let's talk actually now. We're talking about Chris briefly. Let's shift to his second in command. Let's talk about Elizabeth McCall.
The best.
Now, while she is not the first, she's one of the first female assistant master distillers, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and she is, you know, I don't know how long, you know, Chris will be master distiller or when he will retire, if he retires. But yeah, I mean, she's got the keys to the castle. I mean, Woodford is completely set up to be Elizabeth McCall's, and she is such a wealth of knowledge. And I mean, you know, again, you know, we were talking about this with Chris earlier, being able to be at the distillery and just be able to pick her brain. And again, she's a completely open book. She's just like, I want to share with you.
She's so nice. I've had the pleasure of meeting her. Again, you know, like you talked about Tales, but a lot of fun stuff happens at Tales if you're not, you know, super wasted all the time, like some people are. I somehow managed to get my hands on a press invite through some friends of mine for a tasting of the Woodford Wheat, a private little tasting. And I wrote them and like, hey, I'd love to come. They approved me for a ticket. And I met Elizabeth McCall, and that's actually how I ended up on the Woodford media list.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the team all the way up for Woodford. I mean, we're just, I say we, like our team that we have, we're just so fortunate to have the people in the leadership positions and the creativity that they have. You know, it definitely makes my job so much easier. And the fact that, like, when you go there, again, you know, whether it's Elizabeth or it's Chris, again, they're open books. And the whole thing about when you go to Woodford, it's taking it's a peek behind the curtain, right? From the Wizard of Oz. Like, there's no smoke and mirrors. It's, here's the information. This is what we're doing. We have nothing to hide. We just want to let the bourbon and the flavor of everything drive what we do. And, you know, Elizabeth is such a proponent of that and just helps us kind of spread that love all over the country. So she's, yeah.
Absolutely. She's fantastic. I really loved meeting her. I felt so privileged and honored to have the chance to meet her. And then I was also privileged and honored to have the chance to meet and then, you know, during COVID, have a chat with Chris. You know, I met him at a bottle signing. We talked a little bit. We took a really, like, you know, we took a nice photo. He seemed impressed that I call it Old Foe instead of Old Forester. He's like, oh, we know what we call. He knows what we call it inside.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've grown up. I've known it Old Forester, Old Fo since I could drink.
Ofo.
I love it, and again, just be that as a Brown-Forman family of brands brand. Another powerful woman in whiskey running that, Jackie Zykin.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and Jackie's always, because she'll be at, I don't know when the last time you were in Kentucky, but the new Old Forester distillery. Oh wow! So when you go to Old Forester, their new facility is like right downtown. It's like next to the Louisville
117 and 119 Main Street on Whiskey Row.
Yep.
I remember that because I had an interview with Jackie about the 117 series.
Oh, nice. Yeah, she's just like this wealth of information, and she's usually there, so it's always kind of good. Like when you can go there, if she's doing, because they have the tasting rooms when you can go in and kind of taste through everything. And she's just great and just sit and pick her brain, and she's forgotten more about whiskey than I know.
She's forgotten more than I'll ever know.
Yeah. Yeah.
To have a job like that, be it for Chris or Elizabeth or Jackie, to literally be the one making this whiskey, does every bottle have Chris's signature on it?
Well, they're all kind of on the label.
No. Yeah, so on the label, that's what I mean. Like they all kind of bear his name.
Right.
So that is, if it gets messed up, everyone comes to you like, "What you do to my whiskey?"
Yeah.
But no, those three particularly are fonts of knowledge. There we go. There we go. My English isn't working right this past couple weeks. They're fonts of knowledge. They're fantastic. I'm very grateful to have been able to meet all three of them in person, and I can't wait to go to Kentucky for the first time in September. I know, the first time. Everyone's like, "You've been to Kentucky? You've been to Kentucky? No, I haven't. Everyone's like, "What? How?" No. When you go, we'll take care of you. We'll take care of you.
Oh, that's great. September's a really, really good time to be in Kentucky too. It's not super hot.
I'm going for the Bourbon Festival.
Oh, nice. I'm hoping to really get back out there. It's been almost 2 years since I've been in Kentucky because we didn't go out there at all for COVID. But I'm really hoping to get out there again soon because I miss it so much. When you go out there in Louisville, it's such a really cool city, and there's so many fun bars to go to. There's a lot of really good cocktails, and then being able to walk around in downtown Louisville or go to the 21C, the hotel there that has like a museum inside. It's cool. It's a really, really cool place.
I'm really excited. And I'm like, I've got all these distilleries, and it's like, okay, well, I've got to go here. I've got to go here, and 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 I'm not going to be able to make it to everything.
Yeah. Well, and if you're going all the way out there, you should try to take a little John a few hours and go check out Jack Daniel's too.
We might actually. I'm going with my friend Ryan Hooks. I think you know Ryan.
Ryan Hook. I don't know. The name sounds super familiar.
He's from Ohio originally.
And you guys are going in September?
Yeah, we both have actually a media pass to go to Kentucky Bourbon Fest, so we're both really excited. We're planning a trip.
Great, man.
We're looking forward to setting up interviews with the distillers and stuff at the distilleries.
Yeah, I'm jealous. That's going to be a super fun trip. It's kind of nice to be able to go places again,
I told him, we should probably rent an RV to drive there and back instead of flying because of the amount of bottles we're going to want to have.
Mm-hmm. That's always my biggest problem when I go out there. I usually, because I typically pack pretty light, but specifically when I go to Kentucky, I take a giant suitcase, that I'm going to check and then keep it as light as possible, get some bubble wrap, and then bring stuff back, It's packed to the gills by the time I come back.
Isn't it
And
like
knock on wood,
3 liter
I've never
maximum
had
you're
a
allowed to
bottle break.
take?
What's that?
Knock on wood, as you said, isn't it a 3 liter maximum you're allowed to bring back on the plane?
I don't know if there's I mean, I definitely brought back more than 3 liters of booze before, for sure. But it's all, just check everything. So, obviously
Oh
not,
God,
bring it.
absolutely check it.
But yeah, nobody.
Shit, I might not even check it. I might
anything.
just like airmail it back to myself, like just ship it via not USPS, UPS or something.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
So one thing I wanted to talk about that I haven't found a good segue to, I'm just gonna awkwardly shove it in here, is limestone water. Everyone talks about it. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, limestone water makes our bourbon. It makes it so good." And it's like, why is limestone water so important? Because New York doesn't have it. Texas doesn't have it. Washington doesn't have it. Arizona doesn't have it. California doesn't have it. Iowa, Ohio don't have it. But all those states also make bourbon.
Yeah, I mean, the Kentucky itself, where it sits geographically, sits on a giant limestone shelf. And one thing that limestone does to water, one, it's a natural filter. And what it does is it takes out all of the iron, which is something that you don't want to have in your bourbon because it'll make your bourbon turn black. So a lot of people have to manipulate their water to kind of take the iron out. The other thing it does is it adds a lot of minerality to the water. And so what the other thought process is that the water in Kentucky is unlike anywhere else in the world because it sits on this limestone shelf. And that it's also a reason why, we say the best bourbon comes from Kentucky. It's also a reason why all the thoroughbred racehorses come from Kentucky. And there's a lot of thought behind that it's because of the water that the racehorses drink. In Kentucky, they're drinking this pure, naturally filtered water. And that limestone filtration that we use, it adds like a mouthfeel. There's a creaminess to it, and it's unlike any water anywhere else in the world. And so, with that being the main component of any sort of distillate, having the best water source is going to, propel your spirit to be that much better. And so, the reason why Kentucky and Kentuckians, flaunt that limestone water and the bourbon that's made out of it is just because it's so pure. And so there's not a lot of chemicals that have to be added to it. Like for us here in California, we have to manipulate our water a lot. We have good tasting water, but there's chloride in it, there's fluoride in it. They manipulate everything so it's safe for us to drink. Kentucky doesn't really have to do that at all, which is, I think, very unique to them and unique to the state and unique to the spirit and the bourbon world that's coming out of Kentucky.
Gotcha. Now that's an answer I can understand versus, it just removes the iron and then, it just makes it taste better. See, that's a much more, to me anyway, logical, sensible answer of, we just removes the iron, but it also adds minerality and it also, helps filter away some of the other unwanted chemicals. Yeah,
and Woodford itself, we're one of the only distilleries in the world, actually. Where the distillery sits, remember I was telling you they originally picked the location because of the water source, which is the Glen Creek that runs right behind Woodford. That creek is funneled by an aquifer that actually sits underneath the distillery. So we now pump water from that aquifer directly into our fermentation tanks. It never sees the light of day. So we're one of the only distilleries in the world who doesn't have to filter or do anything to our water at all. It's just so clean that we're able to kind of just take it from the ground right into the fermentation tank.
Wow.
And again, it's because of the natural limestone filtration that we have.
Beautiful. So let's move on to the 5 wood now. So, as you were saying, this is straight bourbon whiskey finished in port and sherry casks. I want to give a quick shout out to my friend Mitch Weddle, who is out in Kentucky. And if memory serves, he works for the Heaven Hill Cooperages now, but he used to work for Brown Forman Cooperage.
Oh, nice.
And he picked this up for me. I ordered 2 bottles, and he made sure to pick it up for me and got it to me safely during COVID. And then I opened it, and I liked it, but I didn't like it enough to keep 2 bottles. So instead of selling it, which I'm not a big fan of flipping whiskey, I sent it to Daniel and Rex at the Whiskey Vault.
Oh, nice.
And they loved it.
It's a very nice gift, especially considering you can only, I didn't even get one of those bottles because you can only get it at the distillery. We got some sample ones.
I bought this.
That's amazing.
I sure bought the whiskey. Like, obviously, you're used to it, and I'm used to it in our industry. We get a lot of thank yous in terms of, like half bottles sometimes, they're almost empties. But no, I straight up bought 2 bottles.
Well, and, one of the things that, a lot of people don't know about Woodford is that, we do have other experimental stuff. And a lot of times some of the distillery releases, this is distillery only. It's kind of like when Chris and Elizabeth will get something that they want to play with. So obviously you're not jumping in and making, hundreds and hundreds of barrels of an experimental whiskey. So things that come out that are really good, you can only get to the distillery, and they're all super.
I talked to Chris about that.
And what's that?
I talked to Chris about that. I called it an experiment. He's like, well, no, it's not an experiment. Once it's released, it's no longer an experiment.
Oh, that's yeah. But then some of them will in turn kind of turn into or evolve into a master's collection release. But this is one of those really rare kind of, they made it once. It's not going to be made again. You can only get to the distillery. So it's a really beautiful whiskey. And I was glad that, again, we were kind of talking before we went live. I'm glad that you wanted to try this one because I hadn't personally had in probably a year. I kind of cracked it open and tasted it. But I really like, the kind of the raisiny, from the tawny and the ruby port, it kind of adds, and then there's like a nuttiness to it.
Here's the thing though, Jeff, is that we're tasting all the Woodford I have, with the exception of the Dragza sample of the VFR, which was the worst Woodford I've ever had.
See, and that one was for the Masters collection. It was actually one of the most well received. There's bourbon in there that's up to go 16 years ago.
I don't know if I got a sample that was off, but it tasted terrible.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
Nauseating almost. But
did you ever get a bottle of the chocolate malted rye?
So I tried it with Mike Toscano, and I wasn't a fan of it, so I didn't want to get a bottle.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, that one was.
I get to try it. Yeah, I tried it at Whiskey Fest New York.
Yeah, that one was one of my favorite Masters collections that we've done. I just never had a whiskey like that. And I thought that the kind of the cocoa nib flavors that came through were super unique. I finished mine earlier. It was actually during a Zoom training. Somebody wanted to try it. But that one's probably one of my favorites. But I think,
I haven't had many in Master's Keep. I've had the toasted chocolate malted rye, and the batch proof, and I think that's all I've had from the Master's Keep so far.
Yeah, next the one that comes out this fall when we get a release, I'll keep you posted and see if I can snag you a bottle of it. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but they usually tell us about a month before they do the press release. But I'll see if I can try to have one stored away for you down in LA. Much obliged, my friend. Yeah, I love this.
It's getting better. You know, I don't know what it is, but
series.
maybe I'm judging this too harshly, the whiskeys, but man, this has gotten different and better with oxidation.
Are you talking about the 5-wood specifically?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really looking forward to trying your sherry cask finished malt, because that just sounds really, really delicious.
It's fantastic. I'll make sure you get some. Listen, Jeff, I love you, brother. I'm going to call it a little early today. Appreciate your time, and we will talk very soon.
Fun, man.
Guys, remember, I'm live every Tuesday. Next week, I have Rachel Potts talking Glenglassaugh with me. So that's going to be really fun. In the following week, I am going live from the new Lost Spirits Distillery in Vegas.
Oh, that's
I'll
awesome.
be on site. It's going to be so much fun.
Awesome.
Jeff, thank you for your time, brother.
Sam.
Talk to you soon, man.
Yeah,
Cheers.
I'll talk to you soon. It was great. Cheers, brother.